In the last video, I compared different religions with each other to conclude that Islam is the true path of God for me out of what has been compared, but also is it true for me in comparison to any other religion there exists. I can state so for myself about all religions because my analysis to come to Islam is a study between all kinds of faiths in the same way done as previous video. You can do the same by comparing all faiths, but I would suggest to start with the religions in before mentioned video. Also, a confirmation with God, as has been explained in other videos, can be done in regard to those religions presented, but also others to conclude a truth. So what is Islam? Islam is a peaceful religion. Anybody who sincerely dives into the reading of Islam and its teaching will immediately notice that Islam strives for good and dissociates from evil. One who studies Islam for oneself in sincerity will definitely see light of guidance. Islam literally means submission, a submission to God, meaning one strives to live a life in which God would be pleased with. All of us submit ourselves to something, whether it is to our desires, money, or whatever it is. What do you bind yourself with? I would suggest trying binding oneself with everything, whether it is God, to money, to people, or whatever, to then conclude for oneself which way will make oneself the most free and happy, something we all strive to obtain. Now, a person who adheres to Islam is called a Muslim. There are good Muslims and bad Muslims. It doesn't mean because one adheres to Islam that one is subject to only being good and for one to obtain paradise without judgment. Nay, a Muslim, just like anyone else, is judged by God accordingly. A Muslim is not a reference to use for us to conclude if Islam is the correct guidance of God or not. An example of what I mean by this is that if you have a Muslim friend who is evil, you shouldn't tell yourself that Islam is wrong based on this friend. Firstly, the opposite in good Muslims always exist, and secondly, those who adhere to our guidance, whether it is a religion, a human-made ideology, or the society, is only benefiting or giving disadvantage to oneself, not God or someone else. God and His guidance, for instance, doesn't become imperfect if me or you sin. This only affects us. A country with its laws isn't evil or does not become evil if those who try to follow the laws of a country do wrong. Within every group of faiths and ideologies and within society, there are good people and bad people, but we do not say the law they abide by in any faith or ideology or society is bad because a follower of it is bad. And so people are good within Islam and not so good. Same goes with Christianity, atheism, and so forth. We have examples from serial killers that doesn't believe in anything, or Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindus who kills. Such people does not represent each belief system. And also, if a Muslim is good, this doesn't measure a truth either, because someone who is not a Muslim can also be good. A comparison of each faith one come across, and with the logic of fundamental differences between these faiths, is what we should strive to look into to realize a truth. Now, what does Islam give to oneself? I can only talk from my perspective. It has given me a goal to fulfill between myself and God, a purpose in life in which if I complete, will find true happiness and peace. That even if I do not by myself obtain this happiness and peace within, it will reach me by this external source, whether I like it or not, as a gift for fulfilling a covenant between myself and God. Depression, anxiousness, and all kind of mental instabilities will be erased. To better understand what I mean by all of this is an example of Prophet Jacob, a righteous servant of God who fulfilled his missions with God, fulfilled his purpose between himself and God, and was given by God a reward of inner peace and happiness and understanding. So what Islam gives is a life purpose, a treasure. Either one can fulfill it or not. But adhering to anything other for me than Islam, I cannot link with God to understand what my purpose is. So each one of us can activate the understanding of our purpose in life, each one of us with our specific purpose with God. But that would be for one to find a logical guidance first, in which I have found in Islam. It is an inner communication between God and oneself. As any faith, ideology, or society system, Islam also contains laws and regulations to follow, and if one follows it as a habit, will eventually not feel difficulty in adhering to it. I have noticed that God works with you in your own pace, so that the soul is not overburdened with too much information or tasks. Everything will be presented in due time. Now, it is so that God's religion in Islam contains the Book of God, the Quran, which was revealed by God to Prophet Muhammad over 1400 years ago. According to Islam, God has sent representatives of His during all times that acts as warners, messengers, and guides, so that there exists a proof of God to all people. Prophet Muhammad is the last prophet sent to mankind according to Islam. The Quran was explained by Prophet Muhammad to his people around at that time he lived. The people observed him and tried to live a life according to it. And so the knowledge of the Quran, the way of living according to it, was then passed on to the next representative of God after Prophet Muhammad, a successor to Prophet Muhammad with the title of being a leader over mankind, guiding back the new people to Prophet Muhammad's way of living. So the teachings of the Quran and Islam as a whole was spread by each representative of God from Prophet Muhammad until the guide in our time, Imam Mahdi, so that each and every time with its people gets correct guidance from God with the proof of God. Islam also consists of not only the words of God in the Quran, but also the narratives from Prophet Muhammad and the successors of Prophet Muhammad up until our time in separate books, explaining the Quran with the correct interpretation and about the way of living, but also other topics such as awakening, spirituality, and how to come closer to God. The sayings of these representatives of God teaches us also about how to be as a human being in personal level with the people around us and the relationship between oneself and God. Coming back to the Quran, within it there is also information about how to be as a person to the people around us, such as our family, neighbors, and other people, but also one's relationship with God. It gives stories about God's prophets, such as Prophet Adam, Moses, Jesus, Abraham, Muhammad, and their lessons. The Quran further consists of historical narratives, scientific proofs about the universal life, which later has been confirmed as true by scientists, who God is, laws to adhere to, solutions to depression, anger, sadness, and how to achieve success in this life and the next. I cannot do justice when describing the Quran, but one can always read for oneself to realize its vast amount of goodness. So Islam, which consists of the Quran and the narratives of God's representatives from Prophet Muhammad up to Imam Mahdi, is what makes up God's religion. But Islam came over 1400 years ago. What about the times before Islam? Isn't Islam for whole mankind? When it comes to Islam, it is a term that means submission to God. The correct way of submitting to God before today's Islam was the correct teachings of Christianity and Judaism when Prophet Moses and Prophet Jesus was given the Holy Scriptures, the Bible and the Torah to these prophets. That was the correct Islam, guidance to mankind during these prophets. In the times of Prophet Moses and Prophet Jesus, the religion of God was still called Islam, meaning submitting to God in the terms of correct Christianity and Judaism, with the correct Bible that God gave Prophet Jesus and the correct Torah God gave Prophet Moses. These two holy scriptures at the time of these prophets was correct guidance to adhere to before the revelation of the Quran to Prophet Muhammad. The original scriptures of the Bible and the Torah, which is not altered, is the words of God, just like the Quran. So it is believed within Islam and the Book of Islam, which is the Quran, that Prophet Jesus and Prophet Moses are righteous servants of God, just like Prophet Muhammad is, and that all holy books from the Bible to the Torah and lastly to the Quran was revealed to each prophet by God. But what the Quran states is that the previous scriptures got corrupted and changed by the hand of fallible men after the demise of previous prophets. God therefore sent Prophet Muhammad as the last prophet, with the Quran being preserved from the time it was revealed to Prophet Muhammad until our time, unchanged. Thus reliable source to go with to reach God correctly. This according to Islam. We can, for instance, read some of the contradictions within the book of Torah and Bible that we have today to understand that it is not the same scriptures as it was in its original form with earlier prophets, or at least this is what Islam states. The language also within the Torah and the Bible we have today is not the same as the original language at the time of Prophet Jesus and Prophet Moses, but the Quran, which is in Arabic over 1400 years ago, is still in Arabic now without any grammatical changes or changes in the sentences or any alteration at all. Now, it may be that dots has been throughout time added because language throughout time changes. The words of English before is, for instance, different than today's words in some way, but the meaning of the Quran is the same and it is free from contradictions in its meaning throughout all times. Islam states that for the altered and changed scriptures in the Bible and in the Torah, Prophet Jesus is not to blame, Prophet Moses is not to blame, and the previous scriptures in its original shape, meaning the Bible and the Torah, are not to blame. But those humans after these prophets, many of them but not all, who claim to be followers of previous prophets, changed the earlier scriptures, which also were holy books of God, just like the Quran is. It is not to say anything bad to the prophets or the scriptures Christians and Jews hold on to today. Both Prophet Jesus and Prophet Moses and the original scriptures, they held that is no longer traceable, for Islam is upon truth and from God. So does then the Quran have statements within that goes against each other, so it is not reliable? From my research, I have not encountered to be this case. One can do a research within the Quran to see if there is contradiction within, but one should keep in mind that it is wise to see with God if one's interpretation of the verses of the Quran is true. So if you who research find something to seem as a contradiction, either get it explained by someone more knowing or build a connection with God by asking him if this you have found as a contradiction is true or not. But couldn't one state the same about the Bible and the Torah we have today, that if I see something as contradicting within those books, that I must ask someone more knowledgeable in the field without my own claims that there are contradictions? It is true that someone can counter the statements in the Bible and the Torah in which Islam and I, as one who adheres to Islam, sees as a contradiction by having a different interpretation to those statements, but the differences between each religion to come to understand the true path, which can only be one religion out of many that goes against each other, is not just based upon finding contradictions, rather it is also the description of God each religion gives and represents, meaning fundamental beliefs about a possible creator and further differences between understanding the concept of life and an afterlife. That is important to study, in which I find Islam prevail as true over other religions. So the question of if something within the Bible and the Torah or the Quran is based upon contradictions is something that is not main analysis to discuss. Secondly, the scriptures the Jews and the Christians hold on to today have been translated many times, and there is not a trace of the original scriptures in which the Jews and the Christians hold on to, while the Quran, as mentioned before, is in its original language from the time it came until our time. What would be reliable from the Bible and the Torah we have today would be to have same language as before, but also to not have contradictions within if it is true that there are contradictions. Thirdly, if one is still unsure about the statements made about the Torah, Bible, and the Quran mentioned here, one can turn to God or for oneself give a thorough analysis to reach a valid conclusion. What I want to come with this is that since I already did a comparison in before mentioned video between, for instance, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and concluded for me the truth in Islam, so if Islam is true and comes from God, then what I do now is to explain Islam's view of everything, and in Islam it states that the Bible and the Torah and what is presented in these scriptures as of right now is changed, so if Islam is true, then this statement would be true also. Now, why is the Quran in Arabic language? Is it only for Arabs? God states in the Quran that God created us all and He is the Lord of all human beings, not just Arabs. What is true is that there are many more non-Arab Muslims than Muslims who are Arabs. This is statistically shown, but also since there aren't many Arabic countries in comparison to people in other countries who are Muslims. Okay, so some reasons to why the language of the Quran is in Arabic is because God comes only with one language, whether it would be in English, Arabic, Turkish, or Vietnamese. One language God has chosen for the Quran and not many languages, which would have been confusing. The original unchanged scriptures God has sent to Prophet Moses and Prophet Jesus, it is in Hebrew or Aramaic and not many languages at the same time. Somewhere it had to start, and God willed it to be in Arabic for our time, just like God willed it for Prophet Jesus' time for the language to be something else. Secondly, Arabic is a language that linguists consider one of the best languages to express deep sentences and many sentences in only a few words. Many sentences can be built by only one word in Arabic. For instance, the word camel in Arabic is jamal, which is the most common word describing a camel, but it could also be over 100 other words, one in which is shidad, meaning one who rides a camel, or ghib, which is a camel that drinks water every 2 days. As we can see, the word camel in Arabic can form many sentences in the English language and have different definitions. Arabic is a complex language and is referred to as the most elegant, expressive language. But are there any miracles from Islam or within the Quran that can give more confidence to oneself that the religion of God in Islam is true? I cannot say anything about you, but within me, my intuition is a miracle in itself telling me that Islam comes from God. Another miracle is that even though the Quran is in Arabic, millions of people, non-Arabs as well as Arabs, from the age of 5 up to people in old age, has memorized the Quran word by word completely. This in itself is a miracle which has not been done in any other religious scriptures or any book at all. This tells me that it could only be possible with the help of God, something that He would bless within oneself for adhering to His path. Imagine memorizing a book in Arabic, which is not mother tongue for many Muslims who cannot speak Arabic, and a book which is 604 pages long. It is definitely a miracle for so many as millions being statistically shown to memorize it. This task of memorizing the Quran is made simple by God for someone who is interested, and of course for God it is easy to make it within oneself able to this task. There is also miracles in the scientific statements within the Quran, such statements that was revealed to Prophet Muhammad over 1400 years ago, in which came to be proven to be correct many years after the Quran by scientists. One example out of many is the mentioning of subatomic particles in the Quran in chapter 10 verse 61. For not so long ago, it was believed that atoms were the smallest particles making up all matter, but in 19th century the human discovered through scientific methods that there are smaller particles than atoms, in which the Quran mentions about 1400 years ago. And from the Quran chapter 23 verse 12 to 14 we can also read that the human first was a sperm drop placed in a firm lodging, in other words the womb, and that God made that sperm drop into a leech-like substance which became a lump of flesh, and from that lump of flesh bones were created covered with skin. Now, a professor of high authority in the field of embryology from 20th century has studied this statement of the Quran and made it clear that what the Quran is telling is true, something that was scientifically discovered many centuries after the revelation of Quran to Prophet Muhammad. A last out of many examples is the mentioning in the Quran of the universe beginning from an initial and dense point. In chapter 21, verse 31, it states, "Do not the disbelievers see that the heavens and the earth were a closed-up mass? Then we opened them out." The word for closed-up mass in Arabic is radkan, which hints at darkness, a single unit and closed-up mass. Scientists has mentioned that everything from the beginning of the universe was a single unit, closed up then opened up. This idea was discovered by scientists many years after the revelation of this verse, which states the same. Many more miracle statements exist in the Quran, but since I try to make this video short, I will refer these other miracles to be looked at elsewhere, such as typing miracle of the Quran in YouTube or in Google. Now, even if these scientific statements have already been described by the Bible or the Torah we have today, which then would have been before the statements in the Quran, since the Bible and the Torah originally comes from God, in which today's scriptures are partially correct and partially not, altered by men according to Islam, then the verses of the Bible and the Torah stating the same as the Quran regarding this is still from the same God of the Quran, since the Bible and the Torah was sent by the same God to Prophet Moses and Prophet Jesus. So even though the Bible and the Torah is before the Quran with these scientific statements, it isn't that anyone else other than God has mentioned it before, because the Bible and the Torah is from God, no one else. But could it not then be stated that the Bible and the Torah is correct over the Quran for being before the Quran in those statements? It cannot be said so, because according to Islam, the Bible and the Torah has been changed, so not trustworthy as a whole to adhere to. Islam mentions that there are still traces of true statements within the Bible and the Torah from the time of Prophet Moses and Prophet Jesus in today's scriptures, such as for instance the scientific statements. Islam further states that not everything within the Bible and the Torah has been corrupted, but since it is corrupted by men to a certain degree so that contradictions exist, then the Quran, which both have scientific miracles and is fully without contradictions, is more true to hold on to. And actually some scientific statements within the Quran, such as the example of subatomic particles, is not mentioned in the Bible nor the Torah. So there are statements in which the Bible and the Torah did not have before. Some may also state that long before the Quran, such as in time of Aristotle and others, has mentioned many of the same statements the Quran mentions as scientific proofs, so it is not something new within the Quran. It could be true or not, but within my analysis that doesn't take anything away from Islam, and it would still be a true path for me to hold on to, since the Quran with the same accuracy tells these scientific proofs. So firstly, it is not wrongly stated, and secondly, these scientifically proven statements in the Quran is there for other reasons than just to be seen as miracles. It is also so that it is not proven that, for instance, Aristotle has mentioned some of these miracles in the Quran before. It could be true or not. The fact still remains that Islam describes the most logical way for me to adhere to, since it mentions the possible existence of someone causing the universe and all life, rather than nothing or itself itself causing it, but also other aspects in life and in an afterlife I find to be true, altogether making it the best path for me. With that being said, the miracle aspect of the verses in the Quran is one tiny way of looking at why Islam could be true. There is, as we have discussed earlier, logical arguments in other fields other than studying the Quran and its miracles in itself to conclude Islam to be upon truth for me. Indeed, the Quran and Islam as a whole from God to us is a moral and a spiritual guide. You can call upon God to see if it is true that Islam is the correct path or not. All the best.